The M4A1 Sherman was the first version of this legendary tank to hit the battlefield. You can easily spot it by its smooth rounded cast hull, which gave it a very distinct look compared to later models. It packed a 75mm gun and was powered by a radial aircraft engine. While it was a solid design for the time, the high profile made it an easy target. Still, it proved incredibly reliable and easy to repair, setting a strong foundation for the entire Sherman family. Next up is the M4A2, which shifted away from the cast hull to a flat, welded design. The biggest change here was under the hood. Instead of an aircraft engine, this tank used twin diesel engines. The US Army mostly preferred gasoline, so most of these were shipped off to the Soviet Union and the British under Lend-Lease, or given to the US Marine Corps. The Marines loved the diesel engine because it was safer and shared the same fuel type as their landing craft during island invasions. The M4A4 was built out of pure necessity when standard engines were in short supply. Engineers took 5 6-cylinder car engines and bolted them together to create a massive 30-cylinder monster. Because this engine block was so huge, the tank's hull actually had to be lengthened to make it fit. You will rarely see American forces using this version in combat. Almost all of them went to the British, who used them extensively and found ways to keep that complicated engine running. By early 1944, the Allies needed a way to safely clear minefields before major assaults. The Sherman Crab was the brilliant answer to that problem. A spinning cylinder was mounted right to the front of the tank, covered in heavy metal chains. As the tank drove forward, the cylinder spun rapidly, whipping the chains against the ground to safely detonate hidden mines. It looked strange, but it saved countless lives on the beaches of Normandy and throughout the push into Europe. When heavier German tanks started appearing, the standard 75mm gun just could not cut it anymore. The British stepped in and modified the M4A4 to carry their massive 17-pounder anti-tank gun, creating the Sherman Firefly. This new weapon was so long that they had to mount the radio outside the turret just to make room for the recoil. It was exactly what the Allies needed, finally giving them a Sherman that could punch right through heavy enemy armor from afar. As the push toward Germany continued, the Allies realized they needed a tank that could take serious hits while leading infantry assaults. Enter the Sherman Jumbo. This variant was loaded down with extra steel plates, making its armor incredibly thick. The turret was entirely redesigned to be heavier and tougher. Because of all this added weight, the Jumbo was notably slower than a standard Sherman, but the troops loved it because it could survive direct hits that would destroy other tanks. The Easy-8 arrived in late 1944 as the ultimate American Sherman of the war. It solved the long-standing suspension issues by introducing a horizontal system paired with much wider tracks. This made the ride incredibly smooth and allowed the tank to carry a larger 76mm gun without losing mobility. The Easy-8 became the gold standard for American armored units, fighting all the way to the end of the war and going on to see heavy use during the Korean War. Fighting in the Pacific theater required entirely different tools, especially when dealing with fortified bunkers and caves. The M4A3R3, commonly called the Zippo, replaced the main gun with a heavy flamethrower. These tanks were absolutely vital during the brutal battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. They could drive right up to heavily defended enemy positions and clear them out with fire, while the thick armor kept the crew safe from the heavy small arms fire that pinned down the infantry. Long after the Second World War ended, the Sherman was still fighting. In the 1950s, Israel acquired a fleet of old Shermans and completely modernized them to face newer Soviet-built armor. They fitted the M50 variant with a high-velocity French 75mm gun. To handle the extra weight and recoil, they added a distinct counterweight to the back of the turret. This upgrade breathed new life into the old chassis, turning it back into a highly effective combat tank. The final and most extreme evolution of this classic tank is the Israeli M51, often called the Super Sherman. Facing heavily armored modern tanks in the 1960s, Israeli engineers managed to fit a massive French 105mm gun into the Sherman's turret. The tank also received a new diesel engine and improved suspension. It is amazing to see a design from 1942 successfully fighting against Cold War-era tanks during the Six-Day and Yom Kippur Wars.